All right, welcome everybody. Good morning. Thank you for joining us at this, our third workshop of the Ingenuity on the Edge series. My name is Ashley Blacquiere. I am a faculty member at the North Island College in the Digital Design and Development program, and we are hosting these workshops as part of a sort of professional development and community outreach series this semester. So a few administrative things before we get started. Number one, I would like to acknowledge the fact that North Island College, although many of you here today are in many different regions, North Island College sits on the traditional territories of the Chalmeth and the Kakwa peoples, and we'd like to acknowledge their stewardship and ownership of the land here. Feel free to make your own territorial recognition in the chat if you'd like to this morning. The workshop will be recorded, which means primarily that we'll be recording Al's screen here, but anyone in the if you have your video on, you may be recorded as part of the gallery view at some point, so just be aware of that. If you would prefer not to be recorded, then just to turn off your video. We will have some stopping points along the way where it's possible to ask questions, but the chat is also open throughout the entirety of the workshop. So if you have any questions, please feel free to post anything in the chat. I'll be monitoring it, and I'll pause Al if anything particularly pressing comes up. And in general, of course, a lot of you probably aren't too familiar with BlueJeans. This is a screen sharing and conferencing software that we use at North Island College, but it's pretty similar to Zoom. So since we're all pretty familiar with Zoom these days, I think a lot of you will be pretty familiar with the tools in general. Okay, so let's get right into it. So we are very happy to welcome this morning to Ingenuity on the Edge, Al Sinoy, who is a friend of mine, and our friendship goes back a number of years from being graduate students at the Center for Digital Media in Vancouver, and that's where Al and I originally met. And since then, Al has really forged a career as a Scrum Master and Agile coach, working in a wide variety of companies, game studios, and most recently with Telus at Telus Digital, where he helps ensure that teams are efficient. It helps ensure that they work to a high degree of performance and brings them all the goodies of Agile and Scrum, and makes sure that they're working to their absolute best. So we're very excited to have Al with us today, and he's going to share a lot of the wisdom that he's built up over the years, working with a number of different companies like Wooga and Playmobil as well, Playbiba. And we're going to get a lot of opportunity to ask Al some questions and work with him, I think, and hopefully we'll see him again. Hopefully we'll see him again soon, perhaps with more Agile down the road. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Al. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat, and we'll get to them. Or at any stopping points, feel free to unmute, and we can have a nice lively discussion. All right, on to you, Al.
Thanks so much, Ashley. Really appreciate the introduction. It's probably one of the first times where it just felt real, almost being on the stage here. And thank you so much for the opportunity to share to the community, and also recognizing a lot of names who came from my support from my network. Thank you for joining. So I'm here. Welcome to Agile 101 with myself, Al. Ashley has already kind of provided a preamble of my background, but I'll dive a bit into that a bit more. The flavor of this workshop, or this kind of like share out, will be more about the why of Agile, why we want to do Agile, what's the motivation for it, a little kind of a context there, and just to kind of like dive high, not like refresh high level or have a look high level what the mechanics look like. But I think a lot of times from sharing these workshops, what I learned is that showing the mechanics isn't as valuable until we kind of like really mull and digest the why of agility, right? I'm very happy to share a bunch of that with you. I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward for us to have a really interactive session. For those who don't know Miro, this is kind of like my infinite whiteboard that I've come to love ever since we've come to this unfortunate pandemic. But it allows us to do these type of interactive workshops remotely and co-located. So really looking forward for us to do this together. I'm just gonna provide in the chat the link to this Miro. It should be open to everyone. And we'll be doing a bit of a one-on-one, a 101 on how to use Miro. So for those who want to follow me on the Miro, feel free to go there. But if you just want to follow me from the screen itself, feel free to do that as well. Right, but just bear in mind, there's going to be an interactive component to this workshop. So looking forward for you to join that, whoever can be part of this or will stick out to this. And I'm also looking forward for people who are willing and have the appetite to be part of the conversation, the workshop, to also provide some post-its or add some post-its. But I'll also provide some opportunities for people to go off mute and just ask me questions and have a discussion. And I'll be leaning on Ashley to just make sure I'm on time and I'm on track. But we'll be using a lot of time boxing to make sure that we move things along. For those, just to get straight into it, the agenda, I have a whole Kanban board here that will keep me honest of what we were going to be doing. This whole thing, for those who know the training of the back of the room mechanic, giving a shout out to one of my mentors, John Barnes, who taught me the concept. C1, this first chapter will be called connection. So we'll be spending a bit of time in the first 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes, just getting to know each other, using Miro, understanding your expectations of what you would like for the next one until the 12 o'clock mark. Well, actually 11:30 till we have that question and answer round. C2 to C3 will be concepts and concrete examples. We'll be doing a lot of exercises and actually go into the concrete concepts of agility. That's where I think a lot of the meat and the core concepts or information or insights about agility will be useful for you. And I'm also looking forward for you to try out the virtual ballpoint game in person to actually feel the power of agility. And then towards the end of that segment, I'll go, as I said, high level on agility and Scrum and the mechanics. But in the interest of time, I'll reserve the simulation for that for hopefully a second session later in the year to be determined, as long as there's interest. And then we'll close it off for you to give me feedback or find out what were your biggest takeaways from this workshop and how you would like to move on forward, right? And obviously you can also ask the remainder of that half an hour some questions. I'm gonna even invite my colleagues here to ask me the hard questions if they want to kind of roast me on this session, put me on the spot. Just be kind to me. I'm just gonna ask for that. So without further ado, I'm gonna go put all these now. It's gonna feel a bit meta. There's gonna be many moments where it'll be like, wow, he's actually using mechanics from what we would usually use in the Scrum world. So this here is a Kanban board that kind of like helps me track progress of what's to talk about or to do, what's in progress, and what would be done. So I'm just going to take all these things, C1 into progress. That wasn't so smooth as I thought so, but like, I'm just gonna put that there. And then at least the welcome's done and the agenda is done, right? Um, if you follow my screen, I'm gonna go straight to disclaimer. Don't know what happened here, but there would be a picture here that says disclaimer is, you probably know this from the beginning of any video that there's a disclaimer that anything that's here is up to subject to interpretation, right? A lot of this stuff is taken from other sources in the internet. So I can't take credit for everything, but I'm really excited to just kind of like share a lot of kind of like these nuggets or these takeaways. And I feel that my story is just a mashup of things that I can only give credit to the Scrum Master community on the wisdom. Unfortunate, not a good start with the picture not showing up here, but it would be the usual black screen with white writing saying disclaimer, right? Well, but let's then go straight about a 5-minute time box about myself without trying to bore you. So I'm Al Sinoy. My last, how do you call it, 10 years or 8 to 10 years has focused about carving my career in agility and looking to become a Scrum Master, which I'm now at Telus Digital, as Ashley mentioned earlier on. If you ever wanted to kind of look at my portfolio, feel free to go to alsinoy.com. I'm going to say it is very outdated. I know it's outdated. Feel free to roast me on that. But like, if you ever wanted to look on anything that I've done, any of the work that I've done before as Scrum Master, as a jack of all trades, really a master of none, still to this date. Feel free to go there. But that's been basically kind of like my persona, my career persona, as you probably might say, right? So yes, senior Scrum Master right now at Telus Digital. If you look at my timeline, it's quite in depth from 2000, all the way since just before the postgrad in 2009. I was working at the UN as a multimedia specialist, came into the Center of Digital Media, where I wanted to work for Pixar and DreamWorks back then, but that wasn't really the path for me, as I realized. So I went through the path of being confused, for sure, and then through the twists and turns of figuring out my purpose, I found myself in Berlin, where I had an opportunity to become a product manager slash Scrum Master, like for mobile games. Part of the story is that I tried to come back and forth between Vancouver and Berlin, but with the twists and turns of life, I still managed to do, still within that journey, was a faculty supervisor at the Center for Digital Media, came back to Berlin to do some more work there, finally got an opportunity to come back in Vancouver to do a bit more longer teaching and faculty supervising for student projects at the Center for Digital Media. Had an opportunity to do work for mobile apps and playgrounds with Playbiba, very exciting. And then transitioned into an opportunity at Telus, started as a contractor, and happily now as a full-time senior Scrum Master over there.
Hey, Al, I'm just gonna.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just gonna pause you for a second. As a bit of an administrative point here, if anyone is not currently seeing Al's screen share, if you're just seeing either just Al or the speaker or a gallery view, if you hover your mouse over the Blue Jeans screen, you should notice a slider button down in the bottom left-hand corner. I think it's labeled content and people. And if you move it left or right, that'll change the weighting either to the screen share on the far right or to the gallery view on the far left, just in case. I'm not sure what the default was, but I heard that some may not have been seeing the screen quite. Okay, that's it. Sorry for the interruption, Al.
No worries, no worries. Thank you for that. Um, yes, education. Feel free to breeze through that. Very lucky to have gotten some great progress out of there, but it's still not gonna. I'm not still gonna shy away from the fact that getting to this career path was still a hustle, right? So, as I already covered my career highlights, I want to share a bit of a personal story for you. I love all this stuff: basketball, fitness, cooking. Uh, really continuous learning if I have the time for the technology for sure. Travel when we're allowed to do it again. Those have been always kind of like always that can be head up. And top of that, of course, or to my being and my happiness is my family, right? They are span across with my parents in Austria and my family here with my in-laws and my wife and my 3-year-old son here in Burnaby, BC. So that's kind of like me in a in an elevator pitch. I've done this type of workshop before, mostly in person, for various types of you call it clients or audiences. This one very much was you call it an agency in Berlin. I used to do it very physically with a room of white post-its and so on, just to make it interactive. But here, I've done it remotely before, but this is going to be a new rendition or a version of doing it fully online. So happy to have you aboard with me on this. Well, 5 minutes. That kind of worked out. So, for those about Miro, just do another 5 minutes here on Miro. So, Miro. If you are new to Miro and you're just loading this, the link is in the chat. One way to follow through my screen is click here on the bottom left that says frames, and you'll also see the different frames that I have, hopefully, I think in order that you could follow with me through, right? You can also switch the view from actual visual frames to list. List seems a bit more cleaner. For those who are using a laptop, if you having mouse issues, maybe because you're using the pad, just make sure that you have the navigation mode set to trackpad if you need it, right? So that you can zoom in with the 2 fingers, you know. I know some folks really like that. Feel free to do that too. And some tips, right? So easy ways to create your own sticky notes. Feel free to select any sticky by clicking on it and then copy pasting. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to just give you a bunch of stickies for those who want to try it out if you're following me. And then I'm going to do a magic thing here where I'm going to get everyone to me in this area. And those who don't know how to use Miro, go grab a sticky and copy paste it so I can see that you're actually using it if you know how to use it. Yeah, I see some people doing some funky stuff there. Yeah, that's it. That's it. There we go. Using Miro. Beauty. Beauty. So easy. Lovely. Good, 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 good. All right. So now to the next step. Now that you have the basics down, let's do some warm up. Get you used to the whole thing. So this is really important. As you can see, I have all these kind of like cues here that will tell me, and I read out loud just to make sure that I'm on track. Let's do another Miro one-on-one. So already did the copy pasting. That's one way of creating post-its. Another way is just double clicking in an open space like so. Click, right? And then you can, yes, and you can also create some post-its there. You can always resize it. You can move it around, do some fun stuff. For those, one of the other pitches that I have about Miro is that you have infinite space and of zooming. That's what makes it so powerful. So feel free to practice the zooming because that's very comfortable. Right. Now getting into the subject matter at hand about agility. Right? So anything that you know about agility, if you've touched about it, if you really don't know about it, it's okay to just get a sense of the room of the variety of people who have that proficiency scale or that knowledge scale of agility. So how well do you know Agile? I would invite you all to just get a dot here. Put your dot on the range here on the left if you're absolutely new to it. And then under those different colors, if you're below proficient, approaching proficient, actually proficient, and highly proficient, or super master. And then I'll applaud you because I would love to learn from the super masters in the room as well. But please add your dots here on this scale so you can take a sense of the audience. Maybe just under the line so that it's not hidden. But maybe there's a way to do that. Yeah, that'll work. Get this done. And yeah, if you want to add a note under your dot, feel free. Want to comment about agility questions or just kind of like be candid about your level, feel free to add that in there. Look at this frame here. Beauty, time boxing seems to be just right. Awesome. Thanks so much, folks. As you can see, time boxing really does help me just kind of get momentum in this. Very glad to, I applaud and very appreciative of your openness. This is definitely, there's no kind of like judgment here. This is a no judgment zone, super safe. I'm just here to kind of understand where your proficiency level is and kind of like maybe slow down on parts or emphasize on some parts that might be interesting. But it seems like most of you are in the approaching proficient range, so I can maybe talk about stuff about anything more advanced at certain points. But for the below proficient, don't worry. I'll definitely slow down and make sure that I cover the basics more fully. But it doesn't look like anyone's really new to it or hasn't heard of Agile before. So awesome. And the highly proficient I think it's my colleagues or the folks who are supporting me. Thank you for joining, and feel free to add in if you feel that I may be missing out on anything in my storytelling. All right, here we are. Next thing is I got to know the team agreements. So it's gonna feel a bit formal here, but as a facilitator, I try to make it as fun as possible. So it's the way of delivering how we want to do a team agreement. So basically, with the use of Post-its, I would invite you to grab a Post-it and answer or post up an idea or a habit that will allow us to have the most effective workshop. So just as a inspiring or as a example here, this is a photo that I took at a workshop at Management 3.0. We did this exercise here and it was so simple but very effective, just to kind of like set the stage of how we want to do the workshop and how I can serve you as co-learners for this session. So feel free to go into that, post it up, or maybe even go off mute if you want to be brave. But I'll do a 3-minute time box and play some music.
I heard you say play some music, but I'm not hearing it. I wonder if the audio disconnected again.
Oh no. Let me see that work.
As you switched to your microphone, I wonder.
Right. Oh, maybe because of the audio. How about this?
No, not yet.
Yeah. Awkward silence. I'll try to. Okay, let me see what I can do here.
Yeah.
But the audio we worked early on, right?
It did, yeah. So whatever you did before seemed to.
No.
Oh goodness! I just realized I didn't plug my computer in, and I'm about to lose battery.
Okay. So I'll try to keep us entertained here. Still no music,
No.
fortunately. For anyone who's interested, I use Chilled Cow as my playlist just to set the mood. So I'm listening to the music, but you guys are not feeling it. I'll try to maybe restart Spotify and see if that works. But just bear with me. For some reason, there's always a tech hiccup, right?
Yeah. I think we tested it before when you were using the other microphone, so I wonder if that maybe had something to do with it.
That may be right. Yeah, could be. All right, I'm gonna stop the time box here because there's not as much interaction and we want to keep things moving on forward. For sure, I'm just gonna read out what we have. No wrong questions. Encourage open dialogue. I totally agree. Yes, have patience, for sure, with trying to set it up, for sure. No worries. And summary, I'll include that at the end. We'll have kind of like a conclusion at the end of the workshop. Let's use the parking lot for next workshop. So for those who want to use the workshop, so if I zoom out here, think of this as our war room, or as our kind of like our virtual project room. And if you have any questions, burning questions, feel free to take a pen and paper, just post it out down so that you can have it in the back of your mind. But if you want it addressed towards the end of the session, feel free to put it down in the parking lot. But if you're brave enough, feel free to ask, and then we'll kind of like gauge whether it fits in the segment, and I'll attend to it. But if it feels like it's maybe off tangent, I hope it's okay that I'll put that in the parking lot. So hopefully, as a team agreement, just add that here. Use parking lot to revisit questions if we don't have time to cover it at the moment. Group discussion. Please, let's allow for that. I will allow for that, right? We'll, especially when we do the exercises. and we'll have real world examples. I'll do my best to kind of like share my insights, right, without disclosing too much with my current role. But like, um, definitely, if there's anything particular that's situational that you want to know about how to implement Agile, what's not really working with you in an Agile way, happy to entertain that and kind of like that a bit more, right? Um, Funny enough, really fresh off the press when I found out in the morning when I did my usual morning routine. I saw this article on LinkedIn and it said when the Scrum Master as a teacher becomes a preacher. Um, I'm gonna preface that it's very easy for me to go Scrum's the best, Agile's the best, and I've put myself out of the bubble and try really to be as unbiased as possible, right? Because and I'm here to say Agile is really not a silver bullet for everything. That's maybe because of the hype and its popularity, people think like it's for everything. It really isn't for everything. It has some superpowers or some really valuable results that can come from it, but it does require um, the right culture, the right context, and the right environment or complexity of the project for it to kind of thrive, right? So that's kind of like just setting the expectation that um, I'll, I'll make sure that I'm not going to oversell Agile. I'll also cover where it does fail at moments and cover a bit like why, right? So just to kind of like be grounded on this workshop as well.
Hey, Al, I have a question,
Hmm.
if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking about the environment and the environment in which Agile works, we've done this morning a whole lot of like little whiteboardy post-it note type things. Is there is there such thing as a physical environment in which Agile will not really work because of a lack of these types of
Mm.
tools? Can Agile? I mean, I know we rely on post-it notes and whiteboards, but can Agile be done without those things?
Candidly, I think it can. I think the supplement of the visual tooling, just having something to track work somehow, whether it's an actual whiteboard or a board with just columns in here. I can show you how easy it can be done. Like there's my uh, there's my kind of cabinet here with my 3 columns of to do in progress as done. It can be as easy as that, but like if you were to say like can it be done totally without it? I think so. I think so. Maybe verbally, but it's hard to track it. Like you want something that's tangible that you can actually feel the progress moving forward. So that it's 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 uh, it's definitely a nice to have for sure as a tool. Right? I might as well jump into it right now in terms of like references. If you wanted to know different areas where Agile and Scrum lives outside of software, this book has been kind of like my Bible. I don't want to say Bible. We're trying to not preach here, but like my go-to material here that from kind of the kind of like the originators of Scrum, Jeff Sutherland, the godfather of Scrum. He has the chapter a lot. He covers where he uh, built up the concept of Scrum, why he did that, more about kind of the spirit of it, and he also covers outside the context of software where it thrives. So in education, in philanthropy, in rebuilding a home. So I can kind of like touch on that a bit too. The name of the book is The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. Huh? Isn't that a marketing thing, right? And that's Scrum by Jeff Sutherland. That's a great book. All right, cool. I guess we set the stage here. We are at the thing here is like, are we at 10? We're just 8 minutes over, which is okay. I kind of like pause here and open up for any other questions, shout outs, comments, if there are any. If anyone wants to go off mute, let me know what's up. Everything kosher? Gamer done. Get to know Al done. Miro onboarding done. Doesn't that feel nice? Team agreements done.
You've got one question in the or a comment in the chat. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm I'm reading it while I'm trying to communicate it. Okay, no problem. Thanks for coming back, Terry.
Cheers, Dre. Little side note there. I know Dre because I'm gonna be candid here. He was interviewing for a position that we have at our base, but he found a more interesting opportunity that was offered to him, so we couldn't get him on board with us. But he's been a kindred spirit, and especially happy to kind of like make the connection with him as a Scrum Master. So
never say never, right? So as long as the door's left ajar, I might come back.
Oh, good, awesome. Mate. Thanks for coming.
No, you're welcome. Anytime.
Hey, you know the ballpoint game? I'm gonna be doing this here, so I know it's gonna be recorded. Hope it's gonna be open, so you'll probably see.
That's awesome. Brilliant. That's awesome. Thanks, man. Good luck, mate. Take care. Bye bye.
Cheers. All right, the fun stuff. That's is stuff fun so far? Hopefully. But I'll kind of like get along with my Kanban board here. Ballpoint game, a bit of a spaghetti challenge example as a video. What is Agile? What is Scrum? And then the roles. Done quite a bit already. So in just an hour, slightly over half an hour. Feels good to have. All right, this will require all the brave folks to be actively involved. Anyone who is going to be unfortunately dropping out, feel free to kind of step back, or throw in a wrench and just kind of like participate and say, sorry, have to leave. That's also kind of like the real world, you know. If anyone wants to talk about real world, when you may relate, if you do work and suddenly people have new opportunities and have to leave, you have one resource left. So what do, right? You have to kind of adjust. Right, so this will help with the simulation if you want to be part of this ballpoint game. So bear with me for those who know the ballpoint game, but I'll also challenge that this is kind of like a new way of doing it, which I just researched yesterday. So also bear with me if we're just doing a bit more experimental and knowing how this game works. But this is a go-to game that is almost standard for a lot of workshops in Agile, called the ballpoint game. And this has been kind of like reviewed and renditioned, and there are different ways to do it online. So I'm just going to follow a bit and read out what the values are and go through the instructions, right? And then we'll play this together. Right, and invite everyone to be part of this. So why do we want to play this game? It's an experience learning for fundamentals of Scrum, getting to feel what iterations are, knowing the PDCA, plan, do, check, act cycle, right? Visualizing our progress of how we deliver a velocity or kind of deliver ballpoints, and then the kind of like reflect on the whole principle and self-organizing, self-responsible teams. Really perfect for beginners, but a lot of fun to kind of refresh and try this out. If anyone wants to know and use this template, like I said earlier on, I can't take credit for this. For those who know Miro, there's a template at the Miroverse called Virtual Ballpoint Game by Ambassador. Folks this fella from Vienna actually has a video of how he would run it, but I'll run this with you live. And for those who are ready to play, feel free to follow the instructions. So the ballpoint game, the virtual edition. Everyone in this room, all 18 of us, I guess excluding myself, and if Ashley wants to play, feel free to play, Ashley. Every one of you is one big team. The group starts counting from 1. Numbers are conquered, or numbers are shouted out in sequential order, right? So someone has to say 1, someone has to say 2, 3, 4. Everyone has to participate and take part of the counting process. Participants who must remain silent if it's not their turn to speak. When it's our participants' turn to come on, they either say the number. Oh no! They either say the number.
Undo.
Undo. I'm gonna lock it. There we go. When it's a participant's turn, they say only the number and nothing else. Or if the number is a divider of 3, the participant who comes on should clap instead of saying the number. If 2 or more participants talk simultaneously, the group as a team, you start again all over from 1, right? If there's a counting mistake again, for example, 1 and someone says 4, you start from 1 again, right? The final score of the conquered numbers, or the final number that's been mentioned, is the maximum number that the group has reached during their iteration. So just to kind of like simulate how that looks for you, someone in the team says 1, 2, someone goes, then another one goes 4, 5, and then so on, right? And there's a little cue here that'll be useful for you. And I'm going to give you another tip. There's going to be iterations. We're doing sprints. You don't know sprints already. I'm going to be giving you some time boxing. So you have to be brave to start collaborating with each other as a group of 16 people, talking to each other off mute and coordinating. Feel free to use these post-its here. But I'm going to leave it up to you to figure out your process. So what does this look like? Before I kind of make sure that everything just works fine, is the initial planning, just figuring out this game, 2 minutes, talk, figure stuff out. I'm going to be stopping the time, and then basically I'm going to ask you to estimate what's the maximum number as a team you will reach. Then we'll see, we'll do the actual playing for 2 minutes, see how far you get. We'll measure, we'll stop the time box after the playing, and then do a 1 minute retro really quickly. All right, figure out how do you want to improve the process. And I'll be very strict if I can, because I'm not very good at being strict, but I'll kind of like get us going, and then maybe I'll document the improvement that you make, and then get you going to another sprint. And we'll do this iteration at least 3 to 5 times, and hopefully you'll have fun with this, and then we'll do a bit of reflection at the end. Are there any questions before I start getting you to jam on this? I think you're on mute, Ashley. I can't hear you.
Yeah, I was trying to unmute everyone, so I unmuted all and thought I was unmuting
Awesome.
me, but no. So you may have to manually unmute if you want to participate. I'm not sure why my control doesn't work.
Okay, cool. I'm just looking at the people. Yeah, manually get off mute. Be brave, be courageous, have fun with this. I'm gonna start with a 3-minute time box and go.
1.
Oh, this is the planning stage, so you guys should talk to each other.
No, that's as far as I think we're gonna get. No, I'm just kidding.
8.
8. 8 seems reasonable.
We could go alphabetically with the people list on the side.
Ooh.
Or
Is that allowed? Are we allowed to do rules?
The process is yours.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good idea. Yeah.
I got to figure out how to bring that list up on the side. Oh,
There should be a.
So count me out. I'm not going to be a counter. I'm having you all count.
Does everybody see, do we see everyone in the same order on everybody's screen?
I think it's alphabetical automatically.
Okay.
Yeah, looks like.
Yeah.
Can we put a sticker beside the number we want to be?
that's what I was thinking.
So just a clarification, you don't stop counting from 11. You cycle round your list until you get to the maximum number.
Oh, interesting.
Oh.
Just keep going.
So if I'm first on the list, I'm Claire. That means I would count 1, 2, and then everyone claps. Is that right?
Oh, I think everybody sees themselves at the top of the list. I guess that does make it confusing.
Okay. So
But otherwise alphabetical.
Okay, so then you're at the top, Ashley, after Al.
Yes, that would be true.
Okay. So you do 1, 2, and then we all clap. Is that right?
Yeah.
No, what the third person or someone doesn't have to be the third person claps, but you make sure that the clap and the counting doesn't happen at the same time.
I have no sense of rhythm. This is going to be awkward.
Be fine. By the way, let's go with it. No need to analysis paralysis. Let's figure it out. All right. Everybody should feel uncomfortable now. That's okay. That's part of the game. I'm gonna give you now a sprint of 2 minutes. Ready, set, go.
1.
2.
Oh, I heard 2 claps. Please start from 1 again.
Damn
Who's meant to say 2?
I don't know if that was an echo. What?
Start from 1 again. You can't go 8.
1.
2.
2. Damn it.
1.
2.
2. Oh, no.
Useless.
1. 5.
5?
2.
No, it
Nope,
has to be
nope,
in order.
nope.
So start from 1.
On first.
How about we put post-it notes with the names of the people next to the numbers? So if this is Ashley, then who goes next? Who says 2?
Well, we can go alphabetical order. It could be Brad.
Is Brad
I'm not sure. If
getting
Brad's...
coffee or is he?
Oh, yeah. His mic's off. So... Oh, no. There he is.
No, not Brad's here. Okay, so Brad is 2. Then we all clap.
We all clap?
No?
I think just one clap.
Person clap.
Just one clap. Christopher claps. Christopher.
Christopher claps. Oh, I see.
Yep. Yep.
Claire is 4.
And then it's me.
Yep.
Gwen is 5.
Okay. I think.
Yeah,
this-
some are alphabetical by first name and
All
others
right,
by
go for
last
it.
name.
20 seconds left. Just give me a
Oh
number.
my goodness.
Just as max as you can.
1.
Go, go, go.
Oh, no. But I'm 1. 1.
2.
4.
5.
Oh no, we got a 3. Okay. Thank you, folks. That's okay. That's all good. That's okay.
Oh
it's
my
part of
goodness.
the experience. It's part of the experience, and you should have fun with this. So we didn't a fault on my own. I haven't asked you for an estimate, but that's okay. That's our sprint 0, and we managed to do. We got up until 3. So that's where we are right now. We'll do a couple more sprints. I'm gonna do a 1-minute retro. Just talk to how do you want to improve this process. 3, 2, 1, go.
Alphabetically.
Alphabetically. So I think Christopher and Brad are sitting out. So let's not add them. So we can cut Chris and Brad out.
Okay.
But
Okay.
alphabetically by how we appear in the list, because some are first name and some are last name, but just how it appears in the list.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So we should have me probably, and then Claire,
And then
and
when?
then
Oh, no,
Gwen,
no, Chris.
and then Erez. Although maybe we should assume Mike's off, being
Yeah.
people who aren't
So that would be
currently.
Sandra.
So maybe not Erez. Let's go with Sandra,
Megan.
and then Megan.
Oh, Michelle's in.
Where's
Yeah.
She's after me
Yeah.
anyway.
Okay, time is up. So with your new process, please give me an estimate of what the max number is that you think you'll reach.
6?
6?
7.
Oh. Who can give us an 8? Tom. Yay.
7.
All right. 7?
Yep.
Okay. 7 is safe. You want to go safe? Okay, let's go safe. All right, I'm going to give you another 2-minute sprint. 3, 2, 1, go.
1.
2.
4.
5.
7.
Oh, start from 1. You have to start from 1 again.
1.
2.
4.
5.
7.
8.
9. Oh yeah, right. That's tricky.
Start again.
Yeah.
You almost got it. You're
Yeah.
wrong. You
Oh, is there?
surpassed.
Is there? Sorry, is there another?
Start again.
Okay, 1.
We
2.
4.
5.
7.
8.
10.
11.
13.
14. 'Michelle.
I think that was it, probably 14. That wasn't bad.
I clapped for 15.
Yeah, that
You
was
did?
I heard the clap.
heard it. It was quiet, but I heard it.
16. 17.
Okay.
Oh,
18?
Okay, I heard 2 claps. Okay, start from 1. At least you got to 18. That's fine. Go, 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 go. You still have 30
1.
seconds left. Maybe you can surpass that.
2.
4.
5.
7.
8.
10.
11.
13.
14.
16. 17.
18.
Oh.
Lovely. So I'll say we the actual you estimated at 7, and we got up to 18. Well done, folks. Look at that. All right. Let's do maybe one more sprint or a couple more. Let's see how fun this is. Just retrospect. How do you want to improve the process? Go. 1 minute.
We need a
Well,
list
it's great
of
how-
follow. Sorry?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's great how we have all the little stickies around with the numbers and things like that. But it's like when that's when we can't see the numbers anymore, it's a little trickier in
Yep.
doing that. So
I wonder if...
so if we put little stickies above where our names are after the 1, 2, 3, 4, when we come into the next section, that might be helpful too.
Yeah.
So this is very
Kind of-
untechnology, but I just wrote the names down on a piece of paper and I just follow straight through and
Old
keep
school.
rotating.
What if we put
I
our
didn't
Very
think of that.
non-tech, but it's working.
What if we put our numbers like this? What comes after that?
Okay, so time is up, my friends. Sorry about that. What is your estimate? How far do you think you can get?
26.
Oh no.
21.
21. Going once. Going twice. Let's go for it. Let's be bold. 2 minutes for a sprint. Ready and go.
1,
2,
4,
5,
7.
8,
10,
11,
13,
14,
17,
18.
Someone clapped. I think someone clapped. So you may have to start from 1 again. Sorry. Start from
Yeah, I
1.
think
I
we
heard someone
skipped a
clap for
number.
16.
yeah,
Please go ahead. Start from 1.
1,
2,
4,
5, Tatiana,
7. Sorry.
8,
10,
11,
13,
14, Tatiana.
17.
Oh no! Has to be 16. After 15, has to be 16. You start from 1. You still can make it.
1.
You can still make it to 1.
2,
4,
5,
7.
8,
10,
11,
13,
14,
16.
17,
19,
20,
22,
23,
ooh, 23.
24.
I heard, by the time I heard 23. Sorry. This is 24, but like, get that. Do we have appetite for one more sprint? How was that?
So I'd just like to say that what I actually found easiest was to just keep an eye on Ashley, because I come after Ashley, so whatever he says, I say the next number. So then I don't have to keep an eye on who's doing what. I just look at Ashley for the hint.
It's recursive. Just hope I don't make a mistake.
Exactly. If you make a mistake, then I make a mistake. The next person makes a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah.
The hardest ones are the ones right after the clap. So those people have to be extra
To think.
on it. So
Yeah.
Sandra, Tatiana, and Ashley.
Yeah. Yeah, I find scrolling down the board and counting along with it definitely helps. But yeah, putting your numbers on your little sticky note
Yeah.
is helpful. But everybody should be every 9th number, right?
You'll have 20 seconds for your retro.
Okay, we can do this.
Hmm.
I'm gonna do some role playing here. So whatever I offer is actually super fake, but this is part of the training. So I come in as a Clap Master CEO. I heard you guys are doing an amazing job. You're doing 4 sprints. I see you're doing a velocity of 23. You kind of like went super amazing. I want to give you all a bonus if you hit 100.
What?
I'll give you all extra 20% bonus if you do the 100, because that's what Google and Apple they heard we're the best clappers, hand clapping team in the world. They want to acquire us, and if we get acquired, we're going to be millionaires. Can you do 100?
No.
All right, I'm gonna put it out there. If we can make it 100, we're gonna celebrate big party. But let me know now I'm switching over to Scrum Master. Well, that was awkward. What is the estimate?
Ooh, I'm putting in all the numbers
Oy.
that I have to count to get to 100, and it's a
Me
lot.
too.
Oh, Claire, you get to be 100.
Do I?
If you do it.
Okay, you be the math person then.
Hmm,
Do you want to write in my
Do
numbers
you
for
want to
me,
go for
Ashley?
100 or be safe?
Oh,
Give me an estimate.
I bet we could get to 50. Maybe.
Oh. 47.
Go for
47, that's
47.
Wait a minute, if you say 47's my number, that means that I'm the one who's going to mess up.
Well, the team.
I'm gonna go for the stretch. I'm gonna go for the stretch goal. I'm gonna put 50 and see how far you get. All right.
Yeah.
We have to
Okay.
go. We have to sprint. Time is losing. 3, 2, 1, go.
1,
2,
4,
5,
7.
8.
10,
11,
13,
14,
16.
17.
19,
20,
22,
23,
25.
26.
28,
29,
31,
32,
34.
35.
37,
38,
40,
41,
43.
44.
46.
47, Glenn?
I clap.
oh, 49. Didn't hear the clap.
50,
52.
53.
55,
56,
58,
59,
61.
62.
64.
Hey. Look at this, folks. Now that we're keeping track of time, but look at this. Look what we've done in like less than 20 minutes. Look at our journey. Look what we managed to do just from interacting with each other. And I don't know if you folks know the storming, norming, performing model. Like I like to refer to this a lot. Like when teams kind of like give their all and get the courage, kind of like play off each other, collab, and problem solve, you get to this kind of like pattern, right? Storming, you have no idea what you're doing. Norming, you're understanding kind of like the playing field. Forming, you're getting into high performance, and then performing is skyrocket on flow, right? And this is almost epitome of what the model looks like. And like if we had more time, if we had more chance to like play it through, we would probably go higher, and we could have been acquired by Apple as the best clapping choir in the world. But there will kind of like a real world situation. There will be a plateau because every system has kind of like a natural velocity state. Right? So that's something I wanted to connect. Let's do a bit of reflection, my friends. Kind of like just staying off mute. How was this game for you?
It was great once I got the hang of it.
Yeah, I like it very much, and I think it's a good idea to play with our teams as well.
Yeah, Yeah, for those who don't know Tatiana is my colleague from Telus Digital as well, a fellow Scrum Master who I jam with a lot of times when we do our work, and I'm so grateful that she's playing with us with our new friends here. So thanks so much, Tatiana. Any other candid feedback off mute if anyone wants to provide some feedback? But otherwise, I can just do. Go ahead.
I just said that it was fun.
I find it interesting the parallels between this activity and other. I've done this activity at the MDM before with with a slightly different intent, more of a more from a theater perspective and a sharing and a being prepared kind of mindset, I suppose, as opposed to a sprint kind of working together trying to achieve a particular goal. But I think it's interesting as well how it parallels with a fairly common programming interview question called FizzBuzz, in which you're required to create a loop that will print out the numbers 1 through 100, except it replaces 3 with fizz, 5 with buzz, and anything that's divisible by both 3 and 5 with FizzBuzz. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so I kind of like to find interesting here, maybe touch a bit on the book. There's a chapter here, and Jeff Sutherland was obviously part of tech and has seen a lot of developments in North America. I think it was MIT, where he was invited into a lab of a robot. I think it was Boston Dynamics. Maybe that I think you folks might know this is they have a dog-shaped robot who kind of like self-corrects themselves. And Jeff Sutherland, if the robot falls down or has a slip up, and he was inspired by that moment to say like, hey, how can we self-correct ourselves as a working system naturally? And that's kind of like where the power of retros come in. You have a pause or like a timeout just to say like, hey, how can we just sit down together and get out of our bubble and say, how can we improve this process? And this was a huge aha moment for me that felt so simple, but has a huge impact for a lot of teams. Just to sit down, reflect, and like, how can we just work better, right? In a safe environment, right? Especially if it can become very playful in a safe environment where people can open up and have courage and just like find granular, collaborate. That's what I live for. That's what I live to see. And I think a lot of us Scrum Masters live to see for those moments. So just gonna time box myself for another maybe 5 minutes here because I'm gonna try to outro to the next piece by 10:45, a bit more over. Feel free to just candidly just say off mute any feedback. I'll capture it here. But if anyone wants to put in their notes, kind of like silently, feel free to go to each question and then answer them. So what did you observe through? What else did you observe through this exercise? So there was a mention of like having fun, being able to collaborate. What other observations did you folks see?
Well, we hit on a system early on. It took a little while for us to kind of implement it correctly, but we kind of had, I guess, Megan's idea first, I think, of putting names beside numbers. From a very early stage, it took a little while to kind of make it work for whatever reason.
Yeah. And what I think, like, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think students would really enjoy it. For one thing, it does, like, it's sort of like an icebreaker, but also it really makes a point about the iterations and that, as you practice something and do it over and over, you get better at it.
Yeah, you can see that through just through this, right? Imagine if we did do the iteration, I would be like, hey, let's forget time boxing. I'll give you 50 minutes to see if you can get into 100. Do you think it would have been possible?
No, I think we needed the constraint of the time to motivate us to turn it into a challenge.
Awesome. Constraints. Awesome. And this is very real too, right? Like you were course correcting during the sprint. And sometimes when people do Scrum or Agile, they say like, we can't break the rules and course correct during the sprint. We have to do work. No, don't wait till the end of the sprint. Course correct and work with this in the context and then in the flow. And a lot of times, what I almost use this as, I use this as a reference to that sprint 0 and sprint 1 will always feel messy because you're trying to orient on each other's strengths and weaknesses or just the problem at hand. So I think as a reminder, like whenever I coach teams or have teams try this exercise, I use this as a reminder. So like, hey, remember, the very beginning is always going to feel a bit messy, but we're going to use time boxes and the spirits of iterations and retrospectives to course correct, right? And build trust in the process, I would say. He talked about constraints. Which iteration felt the best?
The last one.
The final one.
The last
And
one.
why? Yeah,
Because
why?
we already had system. Everyone understood the game very well. And we
There was
used,
flow.
yeah, and we used our previous experience to learn what could be done better. Retrospective, actually.
It also seemed in the last iteration, there was more of a spread from a group task to individual accountability for their part of the task that relates to the next part or the next person in the group. So I started to see people started to add their numbers on their sticky notes as an example of it's irrelevant what other people are responsible for. As long as I do my number, the next person is responsible to figure out where their number is. And I thought that was quite interesting in a group that there was no discussion on, who's the leader of the Scrum, what system we're going to do. It was more just as the systems evolved, success generated the implementation rather than a group consensus that this is the way we're going to go.
I love that. Thanks so much, Jonathan. As the system evolved, naturally improved. Is that fair? Now that you mentioned leadership, right? Like it felt like there was no manager to say. Where did leadership come from? Who provided
the process?
Sense of some leadership?
I think the results from the process was the lead that governed the group. So it wasn't a person, it was a system based, if that makes any kind of sense.
I like that.
Yeah, I agree with
but
that.
But I think the time constraint is what forced the leadership into the system versus allowing the human dynamics to, bog it down.
That's beautiful aha moments for me. This is what I love. I'm learning as much from your insights as because I told you this is my first time running this workshop, and I love Agile games because it helps us reflect on the systems of what Agile is trying to propose. So this is huge. Thanks so much. I'll kind of give kudos to maybe the courageous voices in the group, right? There was Ashley, and I think there was Claire, right? And then eventually a lot of people started speaking up, and I couldn't follow the names to the faces anymore. Sorry for that, but like it kind of just started off, right? And I don't know if you know this TED Talk, but like something that my mentor Jan Barnes always says, like someone has to be the city person dancing on the hillside, and then given that the purpose or the problem at hand is bigger than themselves, they just gather along and figure it out. But imagine that we live in a world where sometimes when the pressure cooker or the pressure is so hot in business, leadership will want like, what is your plan from A to Z? Let's figure it out. You know, that it's a different world. You're in a different mode where creative problem solving can stifle that process or that collaboration. Right? So it's an interesting philosophy. Like how do we provide leadership, or how do we build trust into the whole system? And thank you for that. Any last points about the visualization? I think would you say that the visualization actually helped the whole kind of like estimation and
definitely
trying to match it? Yeah.
I think it helped us to get started, but then we had to create our own systems to keep going with it. Once it got, I felt like once we got past, I can't remember the last number, what it was, I actually found it, once it got past the last clap at 12, I actually found like the illustration was a handicap because I always panicked when it got past 12. So it became a bit too much of a crutch at one point.
Yeah, it's very real. So if everyone wants to talk about real world situations, this is very applicable, right? Like a lot of teams will be like, oh, there's a motivation phase to this, but like this is now how do you call it? The empiricism, measuring our velocity is part of the practice, right? Like how do we measure flow? How do we measure performance? This is one way, it's a playful way of saying like how do we get to flow? The real world situation is that clapping hands, not to discredit it, and we're amazing hand clappers as a choir. Software development or even just like business is very complex, right? So when we use story points or some sort of pointing mechanism to measure our velocity, helps us understand a bit about like what our average speed is like. Now, the one thing that I do want to add here and highlight is people will think at this point in iteration, yeah, when we do Agile, we'll be like skyrocketing super fast all the time, right? We'll always hit 100, 200 exponentially. No, that's not the point, right? There is a process of improvement until you hit a plateau. And then that's where as Scrum Masters or a Scrum team, you want to build curiosity like, hey, are we reaching our high performance? Or now that the CEO is pressuring us to say like, hey, he's giving us bonus. Oh no, my life depends on this bonus. I want to get as many claps as possible. That also kind of like destroys, or not that doesn't destroy, but messes up the motivation sphere, right? Some people are super driven by that. Yeah, the extra 100 claps, I'm gonna feel super amazing. I'm gonna buy my Tesla next month. Or people get super like anxiety, huge anxiety from like, oh my gosh, like I'm already so busy from all the hand clapping from the last sprint. I'm tired. I don't want to clap anymore. Right. So there's a purpose or a situation in the retrospective to kind of measure people's motivation or feels like, are they at flow? Are they feeling motivated? So there's a lot here, even in this book, about motivation, which is what gets people motivated. It's autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Happiness. That's the purpose of happiness. It's not the money. really. Of course, the money is useful. But if you hit those strides of autonomy, mastery, purpose, really great things can happen as a team. But it's super complex. People are people, can't please everyone, so there is a requirement or an element of coaching that is that we look for Scrum coaches, or Scrum Master, Agile coach. That was a good aha moment for you there. I have a video prepared. I'm not sure if the video will play now that the audio wasn't working, but maybe Ashley can keep me honest if it's working again. I'm just gonna try it here, play, and if anyone hears the audio or give me jazz hands, and I'll keep it playing. Otherwise, I'll try to describe it as best as possible. You hear the audio?
Several years ago here at TED, Peter Skillman introduced a design challenge called the Marshmallow Challenge. And the idea is pretty simple. Teams of 4 have to build the tallest freestanding structure out of 20 sticks of spaghetti, 1 yard of tape, 1 yard of string, and a marshmallow. And the marshmallow has to be on top. And though it seems really simple, it's actually pretty hard because it forces people to collaborate very quickly. And so I thought this was an interesting idea, and I incorporated it into a design workshop, and it was a huge success. And since then, I've conducted about 70 design workshops across the world with students and designers and architects, even the CTOs of the Fortune 50. And there's something about this exercise that reveals very deep lessons about the nature of collaboration, and I'd like to share some of them with you. So normally, most people begin by orienting themselves to the task. They talk about it, they figure out what it's going to look like, they jockey for power, then they spend some time planning, organizing, they sketch in, they lay out spaghetti. They spend the majority of their time assembling the sticks into ever-growing structures, and then finally, just as they're running out of time, someone takes out the marshmallow, and then they gingerly put it on top, and they stand back, and ta-da! They admire their work. But what really happens most of the time is that the ta-da turns into an uh-oh, because the weight of the marshmallow causes the entire structure to buckle and to collapse. So there are a number of people who have a lot more uh-oh moments than others. And among the worst are recent graduates of business school. It's amazing. They lie, they cheat, they get distracted, and they produce really lame structures. And of course, there's teams that have a lot more ta-da structures. And among the best are recent graduates of kindergarten. It's pretty amazing, as Peter tells us. Not only do they produce the tallest structures, but they're the most interesting structures of them all. So the question you want to ask is, how come? Why? What is it about them? And Peter likes to say that none of the kids spend any time trying to be CEO of Spaghetti Inc., right? They don't spend time jockeying for power. But there's another reason as well. And the reason is that business students are trained to find the single right plan. Right? And then they execute on it. And then what happens is when they put the marshmallow on top, they run out of time. And what happens? It's a crisis. Sound familiar, right? Okay. What kindergartners do differently is that they start with the marshmallow and they build prototypes, successive prototypes, always keeping the marshmallow on top. So they have multiple times to fix, and they build prototypes along the way. So designers recognize this type of collaboration as the essence of the iterative process. And with each version, kids get instant feedback about what works and what doesn't work. So the capacity to play and prototype is really essential. But let's look at how different teams perform. So the average for most people is around 20 inches. Business school students, about half of that. Lawyers, a little better, but not much better than that. Kindergarten's better than most adults. Who does the very best? Architects and engineers, thankfully. And 39 inches is the tallest structure I've seen. And why is it? Because they understand triangles and self-reinforcing geometrical patterns are the key to building self-reinforced stable structures. So CEOs, a little bit better than average, but here's where it gets interesting. If you put an executive admin on the team, they get significantly better. You know, You look around, you go, oh, that team's going to win. You can just tell beforehand. And why is that? Because they have special skills of facilitation. They manage the process. They understand the process. And any team who manages and pays a close attention to work will significantly improve the team's performance. Specialized skills and facilitation skills, the combination leads to strong success. If you have 10 teams that typically perform, you'll get maybe 6 or so that have standing structures. And I tried something interesting. I thought, let's up the ante once. So I offered a $10,000 prize of software to the winning team. So what do you think happened to these design students? What was the result? Here's what happened. Not one team had a standing structure. Not one had, if anyone had built, say, a 1-inch structure, they'd have taken home the prize. So isn't it interesting that high stakes have a strong impact? We did the exercise again with the same students. What do you think happened then? So now they understand the value of prototyping. So the same team went from being the very worst to being among the very best. They produced the tallest structures in the least amount of time. So there's deep lessons for us about the nature of incentives and success. So you might ask, why would anyone actually spend time running a marshmallow challenge? And the reason is I help create digital tools and processes to help teams build cars and video games and visual effects. And what the Marshmallow Challenge does is it helps them identify the hidden assumptions. Because frankly, every project has its own marshmallow, doesn't it? The challenge provides a shared experience, a common language, a common stance to build the right prototype. And so this is the value of the experience of this so simple exercise. And those of you who are interested may want to go to marshmallowchallenge.com. It's a blog that you can look at how to build the marshmallows. There's step-by-step instructions on this. There are crazy examples from around the world of how people tweak and adjust the system. There's world records that are on this as well. And the fundamental lesson, I believe, is that design truly is a contact sport. It demands that we bring all of our senses to the task and that we apply the very best of our thinking, our feeling, and our doing to the challenge that we have at hand. And sometimes a little prototype of this experience is all that it takes to turn us from an uh-oh moment to a ta-da moment, and that can make a big difference. Thank you very much.
Okay, just checking my audio. Am I back online? Can you hear me just fine? Give me some jazz hands or awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So you may be wondering, it's almost kind of like a retake of our previous exercise. You may or may not know this already, but it's quite a classic. And for those, it's kind of like a nice reminder for me and a lot of the MDMers from the Master Digital Media Program from the Center of Digital Media, because that's like our go-to first exercise that we have for people just to get really have their collaboration muscles going. And it's always a lot of fun to see each other's structures. And the group of students that Tom Wojcik was experimenting on was us. Especially my cohort, C3. It's funny, and I was doing the nice way early on as like super motivated CEO. Let's get 100 claps. This guy was giving us a $10,000 worth of Autodesk software, and we were like super amped, like, what? 3ds Max and Maya for free? We got it, like, competition got super high. We were all distracted to such high stakes that it kind of arguably messed up with our motivation, right? Or messed up with our performance. So it's an interesting concept. Not saying that those type of things does not motivate people or get us to a higher degree, but there's a concept there, or discussion to be had, or a thought process to be like, are we maybe introducing a little bit of a curveball or shaking things up too much that might harm, performance? So a lot of good nuggets, a lot of good insights to take out of there from different points of view. but in the interest of time, I'll just help us move along, right? But also I provided some links here. There's a lot of, through the power of internet, a lot of people have made blog posts or renditions of it. But also, really earlier this morning, I also in the essence and the spirit of trying to be grounded. I'm also not trying to say that, hey, Marshmallow Challenge should be the go-to like aha moment. It's a strong aha moment, but it has its weaknesses when it comes to experiential learning, collaboration, like the clapping of hands and building a tower in the real world, where the space is so complex, of trying to like create revenue or build something great with purpose and scale. It's a bit of a different beast, right? But little fun exercises, and it helps us kind of like reflect our stance about work. So we take it there. And if you ever wanted to visit these sites, make sure you click on these elements and then click the source, and it brings you to that website. I'll be providing this mural board to Ashley to disperse and share to the community. And you'll also have all your funky notes here as a nice memorabilia of your learnings. Obviously, we have our video. Well, I hope will be flawless and we'll be able to share as well to the community. So we're at 11:04, right? So I'm on the time box here. So what I'm going to try to do, I'll do my best to get to 11:30 to cover the what and why of Agile and Scrum. Bit of the mechanics, but I'm going to be very cognizant of not trying to overwhelm you. It is already quite overwhelming, right? There's a lot of material out there to sink your teeth in, but maybe this might be a good pausing moment for you to give me some feedback on how are you feeling so far? What is your energy like? What is your takeaways? Any questions that's looming in your mind that you already wanted answered, or want to kind of like visit in the parking lot if you already posted and see the parking lot doesn't have any. But just kind of like giving a pause moment here for any feedback, candid shout outs that you want to share so that I can maybe tweak the workshop for you so far.
Just while folks are considering and reflecting, and I'll just note I posted 2 additional links in the chat as well to the Marshmallow Challenge if you want to check out the website, and also to Tom Wujak's page as well. He was the speaker in the TED video that we watched, and I believe is he still an Autodesk fellow? Is he still at Autodesk?
I don't think so.
Or has he moved on?
Maybe. Don't take my word for it.
Yeah.
I know he was actually very inspirational to me when we came to the program, because it was his facilitation skills and his poise.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, he's amazing.
He's amazing, and in helping facilitate and set the stage for workshops and learning and design, right? Like what I'm doing right now for you as a workshop is so credited to that experience and inspiration to those type of folks, right? I think the MDM has been such a great avenue to actually flex that muscle to become those type of leaders, like not necessarily knowing everything, but just enough and using the experience to run workshops, right? And bring people from different expertise to solve a common problem. I think that it's very synonymous to what agility and leaders in agility space is all about. So maybe a little pause moment before I dive into the meat, theoretical parts as possible without trying to bore you. Thankfully, pictures is worth 1,000 words, so I try not to provide death by PowerPoint, right? Always happy to have a conversation, entertain any questions you have. In the essence of time, if there are no questions, then use kind of like my time box here. We're going to use 10 minutes to run through the core about agility. Thanks to the modules or kind of like experience that we just had before with the ballpoint game and the spaghetti challenge, you will hopefully have noticed an aha moment or kind of like digested the value of sprints and iterations, right? And that's where the term waterfall versus agile becomes like a topic. In the world of waterfall or traditional project management, and forgot to post this here, but there's a podcast, I think, on Freakonomics about why do projects always come late, or why do they always come late? And I think they mentioned something about waterfall and how waterfall was kind of like conceptualized or brought in popularity by NASA. When people hear NASA, oh, NASA, don't take my word for it, but some big organization, respectable organization, must have done it right. They're building rockets and they're doing innovations around the world. We should try to follow them, right? Around that time and around that era, that was probably the way to do projects, right? And the way projects were done in waterfall world is that you would have a team that does requirements, one team, and from the requirements team, they pass it to the design team, and the design team to development. Very siloed, right? And then, and I think it seems like a far distant way away that this doesn't really make as much sense anymore, especially in the software world. But what used to happen is you would create something at the big outcome at the very end. You would build all these puzzle pieces. They're not really kind of like together yet. And then 2 or 3 or 4 years has passed by, and then something has been delivered. Now, the real world, now talking back to the real world theme, the real world and the business out there, the market out there is moving so fast, and we can't expend or bet 5-year turnaround from a big idea, especially in software, right? And that's why we see software and apps kind of like build that front and center, maybe because, I'm not going to say it's because of the power of Agile, but maybe it's also because just from the arena that we're working with, that borrows concepts of agility and execution, right? But looking back, like the challenge was like if we expend 3 to 5 years to build something, and then we're in 5 years, maybe at that time the end user doesn't need that solution anymore or that outcome anymore. So at the end of the day, unfortunately, you wasted time, you wasted resources. That's something that people unfortunately don't want, and that's kind of like a bit of a sad story, right? We always kind of like celebrate a lot of stuff that works well, but like one of the thing at the back of the curtains are not the stuff that's not been told is like work that is kind of canceled. Especially there's celebration in agility where you can cancel and stop work and learn stuff fast. That's where this is fail fast mentality to an extent. But in the waterfall world, when years have just passed by, it just feels like, oh no, what did I? A lot of developers, in the Global Scrum Gathering Conference, I've heard someone worked on something for 11 years and it never saw the light of day. That's pretty like, that's really not very motivating, right? But that's how it is. We learn from it, right? And still gain experience. So agility is meant to kind of like embrace the fact that the market out there, the real world out there is volatile. It changes, and we have to step out from. We have to be stoic and practice. How can we change with it, or how can we change our working style with it? So you have these iterations where you have cumulative outcomes from each iteration, and then you improve your team and you improve your product over time. A little comic here is that it's a nice go-to that I used to have in my workshop is that through waterfall design, the stakeholder or the market says like, we want a swing that looks like this. So we said it's on a tree and we want to swing and feel playful. And then the team spends years building something. that is suboptimal because the tree will actually fall down on them. Not really safe and kosher if you look at that, right? But through iterations and collaboration with the user or stakeholder, you can try small increments and figure out the ultimate solution. Time box here again. So when we talk about Agile iceberg, you may or may not know this, but the kind of the messaging here is, it's one thing to do the processes and the tools, all the mechanics of it, but without the core untangible values, principles, and culture behind that team, you only reach a certain point, right? I want to celebrate you all for that, for the exercise before, because I think I can sense that it was very professional, very respectful, willing to cooperate with each other, willing to play with each other. It's pretty safe, right? But there are real world situations where people are people, and there's not a click. You can still do all the mechanics of it, but there is a people element of Scrum Mastery or Scrum coaching that needs to be met to help empower teams. So on the surface in agility, yes, we have visibility, we work really fast, we are error-free, but there is stuff that happens within it, right? Or it is required. So the openness to learn, being able to continuously improve, the appetite to fail, then being nimble to change, just communication, transparency, being safe in that arena is really needed. And it comes with a journey, right? It does have hard work. You need to culture good habits. This is what people don't see. Like, they see Facebook, they see Uber, they see Skip the Dishes being like a useful tool to get their pizza in like 15 minutes or less. Like, extract. We're living in an amazing world right now where everything is so convenient, but it does require a cultural journey or a personal journey to get to that point. And I think that's worth acknowledging. So the Agile Manifesto is kind of like the kern of that culture. A group of software developers, kind of like godfathers or collective people, went in there and asked, there must be better ways of developing. If you go to agilemanifesto.org, you'll see like this kind of like HTML, almost 1.0 type of design of that manifesto. It feels very historic, but I'll drag you over here more on something more visual that will help kind of like hopefully digest what this manifesto is about. So the call out is, as Agilists, we value individuals and interaction over processes and tools. We value actual working software over comprehensive documentation. We value customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. I'd like to entertain the fact here. It's no use celebrating Slack, Jira, and all these really good tools if the individual interactions aren't really healthy. Right now in our world where we're in COVID mode, it's really challenging because we are in our virtual silos. Something that I talk about with my teams is that usually you have your water cooler chats or on the way down to the elevator where you can just talk shop casually. We don't really have that now. Now you have to schedule it in your calendar. It's really odd, right? So how do you culture these moments? And I'm a big fan of just workshops or just finding ways to like the right amount of people to problem solve in a safe space. So that's workshop is one way to do it. Agile games is another way. Comprehensive documentation. There's no like one of the way the book Scrum says like a team of developers won't read a whole Bible of documentation to execute a plan. We need to break it down and deliver high value parts of it. No, I'm going a bit over time, but I think I'm going on a roll here, so just add a couple of minutes here. What it's meant to say here on Agile Manifesto, and it's like a lot of people forget about this, and I think it's worth spending some time, is that if we think this is waterfall world or elements of waterfall, it's not about shunning it, not at all. There's an asterisk here at the bottom that is kind of like feels easy to pass or kind of like dismiss here, is that while there is value on the items on the right, process tools, comprehensive documentation, and so forth, we value as Agilists the items on the left more. Right? And there's, I think, my candid perspective is that, and this is where I feel grounded, is we try not to preach Scrum or Agile as thou shalt do Agile. You should try to have a stance where we have curiosity, like how can we do things a bit more better? And how can we marry the worlds and borrow habits from the waterfall world to just work a bit at a better flow or more effectively. Right? So that's kind of like another, hopefully, aha moment for you. Sorry to add more minutes here, but I think this is worth the theory. Think of Agile, right? It's an umbrella of many practices and artifacts. The frameworks, as you may know or heard, Scrum, Kanban. Kanban is more synonymous to Lean. They're almost kind of like mixed up together, but let's put them together under that umbrella. Continuous delivery, feature-driven development, test-driven development, Crystal, like a lot of that stuff. We borrow a lot, at the real world, we borrow a lot of those concepts, which is why they sometimes are just bundled in under Scrum. But for example, crystal clear and extreme programming is probably a concept that is more celebrated for very dev-heavy teams, right, or code-heavy teams. They are lightweight approaches, for sure, that's frameworks, but like for scaled approaches that beyond one team, you have stuff like Scrum at scale, less, safe, and so forth. And I think that's outside the scope of our sessions. Agile is really about learning. It's meant to culture a learning organization, right? It's meant to respect that the fact that we know that we're going to be nimble and adjust all the time. Real world situation, if an organization doesn't remember that it's meant to cultivate learning, it does not kind of like how do you call it? Does not nurture the culture of high, healthy agility. So it's worth having Agile coaches kind of remember leadership about that. And then in the essence of time, I'll kind of like fly through a bit about this, but I think you can always come back to this to this board, right? And kind of like glance at it. But I think my takeaway here is that, like I said before, there does really reframe. Doing Agile is not being Agile. It almost has to. You have to remember that you have to kind of like marry both mindsets. I talked a bit about here in being able to create a safe environment where you can problem solve, share, find ways to have a shared view of the goal, encourage people to be generalized specialists, right? T-shaped, like a dev can know a bit of analysis and quality assurance, right? But not try to silo them. Really encourage those type of folks or those type of roles. You want to protect the team from distractions. Like those are kind of like patterns you would see probably in the office or kind of in teams in general. The doing Agile is the actual mechanics of it, but don't forget the being Agile, the whole kind of like emotional, social aspect of the process. So it's an interesting one. I think this is kind of like an aha moment. It's pretty extreme, right? I don't want to discredit that the doing Agile feels like being a cog in the system, but like if we go too far, I think, left in our brain and just obsess on the right framework, it'll feel like this, a bit of a slug, right? So using the right balance to acknowledge people's value, how they can perform, and culturing that type of like essence of people and how they perform and how they do work, and marrying them both, finding the right balance should be encouraged as a whole agility type of vision of success. Again, with assistant time, I don't think we won't have enough time to talk about why and where Agile fail. I think what I will share is that every company or every team will have different flavors of Agile. I'll acknowledge that. The challenge is, I think as Scrum Masters, when you join a new team or a new organization, you want to observe first and consult on like how do you get them into, how do you propose a self-correcting system or a cadence where they can self-improve, right? So that's it. Where I think my takeaway for you is that where it fails is that where you feel that the team won't have time to do retrospectives or talk to each other, right? I think that's an integral part of the process. If people don't have time because they have to go meetings back to back and meet where people are, you will only have suboptimal results. So the team needs to be able to bring courage and ask that from their leadership. We are at 11:24, so I'm going to try to run through this pretty quick. Part 2, how to Scrum. So this is almost a teaser, right? If you're enjoying what I'm doing so far, I'm happy to come back again and maybe do a simulation of what Scrum feels like, or maybe you already know it, so it's okay just to say, I'll see you next time. I would love to do a revisit of all these new stuff, maybe beyond the basics. But just to glance over it, how Scrum looks like is that you do have your cadence, you have your sprint, that is 1 to 2 weeks. You split out your work to smaller actionable items. You prioritize them to high value. You go along your week, you go along your sprint, not 2 minutes like not like the clapping exercise, but like the 1 or 2 week time box. Every day you meet and talk about your commitments. People know this as a daily scrum. What did I do yesterday? What am I doing today? And what's blocking me? Usually I would spend a lot of time here is that for a lot of teams, it becomes like canned and automatic. And as a facilitator for that group, you need to sense how collaborative or granular they are at micro-adjusting their work is available at that ceremony. Now with Slack and so forth, they are in ongoing conversations, but like having something like a daily scrum just to say, I have a blocker is very powerful, right? For all of them to do. There are different roles in this in Scrum. You have the product owner, someone who lays down the priority of each items to execute. The Scrum Master, who is kind of the facilitator of the process. The stakeholder, the one who provides the requirements of a new idea or project. And the Scrum team members. The Scrum team members are developers, artists, QAs in the tech world, but it, like, again, expanding out of IT, it can be in HR, just the HR recruiters. The product owner could be the lead recruiter. The stakeholders could be the actual teams who need the gaps to be filled. And the Scrum Master, obviously, can be the facilitator. So a lot of stuff here in one big go of what that feels like. And you have your key meetings there, where you have planning, your Scrum, review, evaluating the product itself, and evaluating how we work together. And then you have stuff here like a separate board or a documentation, like how do you log blockers, And as Scrum Masters, how do you help get those impediments or blockers resolved? And then you also have, and then you also have like a retrospective just to, how do you call it, evaluate the whole project. Okay. From values, I think I mentioned this before. Courage, focus, commitment, respect, and openness. I'm not going to spend too much time on saying it all out, but that's the kind of like the core or the intangible social aspect of the culture of the team that we want to nurture. The actual look of how stuff gets created or the execution cycle. What you want to make sure is that at every Scrum sprint, you want to build an MVP or a slice that solves the problem. So if you were to say, like, I want the stakeholders, I want to get from A to B in a smooth way as best as possible. All right, in 2 weeks, we can get you a skateboard. In another 2 weeks, we can get you a scooter. Another so on and so forth. You actually give them something of value. If you do it in pieces and components, the argument is that it's not really useful to the end customer until the very end. I want to go from A to B as smooth way as possible. Tire. What do you want me to like spin my feet on and get from A to B? Tire? No, okay. The base with 2 tires. Well, I'd rather have a skateboard, for example, right? So I'm also not saying that doing it that way is not the absolute wrong way. Because in real life, we end up falling in the trap of doing that way because there's no other choice. But like as a product owner, as a team, you want to stretch or kind of like break through that componentry type of building so that going back to IT or web development, when you put stuff out into production or live, you're already providing value to the user, even if it's suboptimal. And they're giving you feedback to evolve it. Even though if you know the feedback, you know that you're just ad hoc or weekly just improving on it. And that actually gets the user very excited as they're giving you feedback. That getting them involved in the process too is also quite valuable for your team or kind of like for your audience. More about this stuff, the Scrum Guide, for example, scrumguide.org, the whole official documentation of what it's all about. It's good light reading for those who are really passionate about the subject matter, but for some recommended reading, like I mentioned before, Scrum, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. I have all these 3 books right here with me, always on my desk as a reminder. I'm not actually reading them, to be honest, but it's kind of like a thing for me where that represents my work and what I do as a Scrum Master, just laying there for reminders of what I should be doing in my role as a support person for all my teams. Way over time, 11:30. So feel free to go to my website. I have another rendition of what is like 5 blocks or 5 themes that make up for Scrum. I currently use Jira or Trello or anything to kind of how do you call it, to track work and coordinate with teams. But I'll help you out here, whoever is moving this. Sorry, I'll lock this one too. But in the gaming world, even then, I use whiteboards. Right? This was the backlog, and this was the Scrum board, and I think it was it got a lot of eyes in the open office and how we do Scrum, and I think it was like Al's thing that seemed to be doing some sort of progress for the team. So that was quite powerful. Here, if you wanted some kind of didactic or infograph between Scrum and Kanban, feel free to look at these. This is really beyond the basics, and I know racing against time, but feel free to revisit. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me, get in touch with me in LinkedIn or message me. I'm happy to walk it through with you. It's kind of like a passion subject of mine. It helps to share and see if people understand it and digest it and apply it to their real lives, right? But yeah, at that end, we powered through a lot. We did the ballpoint game. We watched the spaghetti challenge. We talked about Agile. Felt rushed. Sorry about that. We talked about Scrum at a high level. We talked about the roles too, right? But we can always revisit that. Feel free to go to websites. You can always go to the websites and read the stuff upon the, like, you can use the question and answer rounds just to get candid insights that I can provide to you. And now we can talk about closing the workshop. Oof, finally, right? So in my usual workshops, if we were in person, we would have something like an aha about the workshop. What would you do differently? What insights do you have? What questions, tools like that? We would have been able to post that up and just have a really good conversation and about that. But I had a sense last night like we probably wouldn't be able to fit that in, right? So as a kind of like rendition of that, I want to invite you all to come with me here and just give me like your candid feedback on the scale here with these dots. How, on the ratio from fun to value, if you found this super fun and had a lot of value, these mark it there. If you found, oh yeah, that owl was no fun at all, and the value was a waste of my time, feel free to put it there too. I'm happy. No feelings hurt to that extent, right? And then as you plot out, feel free to just give me candid written comments there of what really went well. What is your biggest takeaway moving forward? What do you think could be improved? And then we'll work with questions kind of like with the next 25 minutes, and I'll figure out a way to kind of like entertain that or facilitate that, or maybe Ashley, you can help moderate that. But with that, whew, thank you so much, and we'll go freestyle from here.
That's great. Thanks, Al. Yeah, that's a good overall summary at the end there too. It's nice to kind of see the big picture and understand how it all fits together. I thought from my own experience, I thought it was interesting to hear your talk about the value of Scrum versus Waterfall, and maybe picking and choosing to some extent. In my experience working in industry, most of the teams I've worked with have used some sort of weird hybrid between the two, right? Often that long term, especially on big games, right? 2 or 3 year planning cycles. We've got this big kind of waterfall sort of thing going on to try and figure out, well, we need to get to alpha by now, to beta, to gold standard and ship by X date. But at a more micro level, we've got sort of weekly or bi-weekly or bi-monthly sprints, and daily Scrum and sprint boards and such. Is that kind of approach fairly typical, do you find, in the literature or in your own experience? Yeah,
I would think so. Yeah, a lot for sure. Like it's very common where people will borrow elements of Agile and do hybrid with Waterfall. And I think this goes back to the concept or the theme of the subject of where Agile fails. With no fault to the organizations, right? Like they've operated a lot of while with a funding system. Let's call them CapEx and OpEx or whatever, on how they vet and bring and fund projects that may not work, that actually doesn't work so well with agility, right? Like you're given one big bucket of money in the beginning of the year and you're just meant to deliver, right? So that's not usually the way it works. You probably, one way to do it is value stream mapping, or figuring out ways to have checkpoints within the year at intervals to say like, okay, where's our direction going? We are maybe weaker. Like if we release work, if we're in a situation, back to IT, like in websites or apps where you can actually follow up with improvements over time really quickly and live, that lends well to kind of improvements and pivoting. But like, I guess for video games where you were actually, like it was a physical product that you can't really update over time, right? Like you can't go up there and go like, hey, go to the cloud and update for fixes that has happened. That unfortunately does not lend well, so well for Agile. Like there are elements of Agile that you can put in there, but like there will be a marriage of possibly like Waterfall or something like that, just to make sure that you're on the right track for sure.
Yeah, it's true. The team that I worked on that most closely followed Agile more than anything else was a team that was developing purely for social media platforms. So we were developing games for Facebook and Bebo back in the day when Bebo existed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of a continuous delivery sort of model. So. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute. In the meantime, if you're thinking about it, I have another one for you, Al. I wonder if there's the connection between, or the first point in the Agile Manifesto is the individuals and interactions over processes and tools, and I wonder if there's been much in the way of further research or thought into that, or experimentation, or I don't know what, especially in the last year, given how difficult I think it is to separate our personal processes and how we want to interact and how we work from the tools that we so often associate with, right? Like it's just natural almost to like say, let's set up Slack or a Asana tool board, whiteboard or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, has there been much thought of that, especially in the last year with everybody going very remote and co-located?
Yeah. Kind of like to point the real world with this pandemic, it kind of like it pushed us into a way of working that was almost inevitable. So I came from a school of thought, or kind of like a way of working where I show up to work. I really, not that I like to commute in, but I like coming into the space with my team and immersing myself in how they collaborate and talk with each other and solve problems. But there, especially at Telus, there was this a very welcomed hybrid where a lot of people would work from home or remotely, and that was very cool. And that was an interesting adjustment period for us too. But like going straight where everyone's in the remote pods has been a learning curve, essentially. Like it, in such a fast pace that, and what Telus is so great is that they acknowledge that big change of work. Leadership was saying, like, we understand that it is challenging for you and it may affect your mental health. Having a culture from your organization like that, and being acknowledged of that, and nurture and acknowledge that there needs an adjustment period, is really useful. And I think that's also kind of like very valuable for the employees to be in that space, right? And in the real world, some folks or leadership don't have that messaging, right? Or don't maybe share those same values. And for some folks, they might feel on pressure all the time, and they're in that mode of like fight or flight mode. And I think going back to the social and tangible part, like being able to meet where people are and understand that they are going through challenges from a leadership perspective, going to be super useful, right? It's not enough from having it from your team perspective, it's from leadership to support them from a personal perspective, personal level. I think is highly valuable and sought after as a much needed cultural aspect for organizations. Kind of like steering away from that kind of like leadership, more like as a facilitator, or kind of like I call myself an agile cheerleader. I look for ways to get the team together. So my stance as a Scrum Master, and a lot of people who might be watching this video or in this room who know me, I say that I'm a bit of a kook. You know, I'm a cookie clown for the purpose of being, to say dumb stuff, like be the dumb person in the room. It helps like build this safe space that there are no dumb questions, right? And I grew up with an acceptance that I'm totally cool with just not knowing everything. I want to be able to. I want everyone else to feel that there's this safe space. So it's all about safety in the culture or in the room to make sure that everyone can bring up unclarities, right? So how do you do that? You do maybe those agile games, or you do workshops, a guided facilitated recipe on problem solving with designs, for example. So that those are good to have. Like yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was trying to find a spot to sort of jump in. If you don't mind, I'll share some thoughts. Sort of, I am new to this crowd. I actually live in Comox Valley and saw this in the Comox Valley records. So it was fun to join because I've for 10 years been working in Calgary and Victoria, but with COVID, I can actually live in my house, and it's been very nice. But I was at Nortel when I first started using Scrum quite a few years ago, and so this has been a great kind of revisit because I've been using it on and off and in many flavors, as you spoke to, and many hybrids. And so it's been kind of nice to step back and go back to some of the fundamentals and think about it. But you were talking about the why, but the why you were addressing was largely in how people think and work together and collaborate. And I just wanted to share with the group here is some of the whys as to why I was an early adopter within the environments that I've been using, worked in. And one is, and we didn't really get into this, is I worked in an environment where your product managers created these requirements documents and you had reviews, and then it was kind of drop and run. They were very unavailable to you. So it gave me an excuse, a reason that they couldn't skate around to stay engaged and have a continued conversation with them and to have more ownership in what was being produced. So that was one key reason. The other key reason it solved a huge problem for me is that we had all this entrance criteria to get into QA. And so, you know, we would build and build and build, and you had to meet this standard, and then you went through this lag because then the QA people would finally touch it, and they would have to become familiar with it and so on and stumble. And so it became a very long cycle in that regard. But also, when they did get their hands on it, they're fresh eyes, and they would have ideas to bring to the table that should have been caught a lot sooner. So it gave me a reason to embed QA and work very hand in hand with development, and it solved massive barrier, a wall really between those teams. So the other, I would say, and I'm just kind of trying to remember back, one of the other key elements of Scrum and then the Agile methodology that sort of evolved around and become bigger than just Scrum is this, in traditional project management, they talk about percentage done. They create these massive plans, and then based on the hours expended, they have this fallacy of a sense of how far along they are. And you know, there's this 90% done fallacy that you can Google, and so it's well understood. But what I loved about Scrum when I first ran across it is you are constantly updating that view of what's left to do. So you might have estimated something at 10 story points or 10 hours, but you might be that far along and realize, hey, I didn't know these things I've discovered and I need a lot more time. Or occasionally you get lucky and it's a lot less time. So it gave your plans, your timeline, a clearer view along the way of where were you at. And so that was extremely valuable. So those were, as a development manager, a product development manager, those were extremely important benefits in what let me take that journey, if you like, and to sell it and to get people on board to work in a different way. Now, going down the road and working at a number of companies, things that might be good follow-up conversations from this are, where are some of the real challenges? Where does it break down? And so some of the things I've seen, number one for me would be finance, how companies budget. They don't sign up to buying a team. They sign up for producing, whether it's IT or product development, they sign up to have a scope of work in a period of time within a fiscal budget. That's just how they work. And there are organizations who are deviating from that. I've heard ICBC, for example, put a huge investment in their transition to Scrum. So I haven't heard details or seen it, but I would hope they have crossed that barrier of how they manage and audit finance. And so that just started a new gig with the BC government with their OCIO, and they use scaled agile, but they didn't solve that problem. So although they're working in this agile fashion, they're completely reporting as if they are traditional projects. And so I think that's a big step forward to understand how that happens and what that means, because it does affect your Scrum teams. Then the second biggest challenge I see is, I agree with, build it, break it, fix it, experiment. But if you don't have some sense of that solution architect and keep control of it, you can build a monster that after doing it for years is something that's very difficult and expensive to maintain. So how you integrate some planning, review, and control over your architecture, your software architecture, to me is a key piece and one that I often see done poorly. The other is QA. I see the BC government has Sprint with Us, and it's great, a defined program where they, you compete to get the gig by putting a team together, and you have to perform, and based on both the teaming and what you produce in a very set period of time, someone is awarded the contract, and then they work through it. But what I find is a lot of them are, from a technical point of view, fairly lightweight. They're web app kind of developments where iteratively easier to build on, and but what I find is no one focuses on the testing. So if you don't maintain some automated testing that covers regression, and as part of your sprints, consider that you're keeping up with your testing, eventually you will break as you build, and you'll create something that's very unstable. So those are three watch point areas that I think people are very challenged. I haven't seen across the board good discipline and principles around those. So that would be a great kind of follow-up conversation and workshop around some of those. So there's just some of my thoughts.
Thanks for this, Quinn. Very good questions that are worth definitely putting a pin on. Sorry, I may have lost my internet connection, so I'm just catching up with the bits that I could. But to kind of meet with that thought process as a Scrum Master, my stance is at those key meetings, whether it's reviews or retrospectives, rather than, one of those things about an agility course is that we don't want to give off this vibe of command and control, right? Like I said, I was the friendly CEO saying oh, we should get 100 claps so that we'll get bought by Apple. That throws a bit of a wrench, right? But you'll have personalities who'll be we should get the 100 claps, right? That's even less demotivating. I guess from a personality point of view, when I coach the teams and when they're in the field with them or in the trenches, I pose questions, right, to let them reflect on their way of working. And it happens all the time because we, as humans, we go back to what we're used to, or what we're used for, like what we know, right? But it's this appetite for change. Can we work a bit more differently?
So on that note, it's called, I ran into this, probably 20 years ago. It's the path of least resistance. It's how our brain works. So when we learn new ways to work, where I would apply this is when left unchecked and when you're not reflective of what you're doing and some checkpoints, your brain will naturally go to what it knows and is used to, whether that worked for you or not. It's the path of least resistance. It's what you know. So changing those patterns is very difficult. And so you see that with Agile. They start out with the best of intentions and they gradually peel away at some of the key advantages and start, because the team that I just joined that's using this scaled Agile, it's, you know, they've got the language, but you know, I just don't see a lot of the key principles in how they're executing. They never have retrospectives. They don't have daily stand-ups. They have they have Scrum meetings scheduled, but they're status meetings, and there's a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're used to this advantages of doing Agile, where we we're maybe over Agile or tired of it and lose the value of it, which goes back to the whole. And I try to make things fun. Like I look for opportunities to shake it up a bit with stand-ups, right? When I've seen in not at Telus, but at different organizations, when they do stand-ups, you just realize that they've been doing stand-ups for so in autopilot mode that people hardly listen. You're just doing a status report. I clown it up and say, are you all listening to each other? Okay, let's change it up a bit. Let's throw a ball at each other, and a little thing like a ball, just passing each other as a cue to talk about what their blocker is, helps, right? There's other stuff as well, but like looking for moments to do micro changes, at least when I'm a starting Scrum Master, is kind of my first stance. But then once I build trust with the team, and I can ask the hard questions at them, that helps them reflect my hard, like, conversation starting point, to let them understand, like, well, what are we trying to do with this mindset or philosophy of Waterfall? Can we really work different? What's the appetite for change? So that's one of the ways that I peel away at trying to stay at that essence. And one thing that I may have forgotten is like anything that's a light framework, it's easy to learn but very hard to master. Like most things, right? And that's kind of one person told me that Agile is a never-ending story. So there is no end point. It's an ongoing, continuous improvement that you just keep on reflecting on, like, what is the desired working kind of like working culture that we want to maintain, and always making sure that we're close to that. Because we sometimes forget those values if we're just in the trenches and don't have time to do retrospectives and don't value those mini meetings. Because sometimes when we do those mini meetings, the small meetings, a lot of developers will say, we do too many meetings. I just want to work. I just want to do my stuff. But they lose the value of cross collaborating. So that's an interesting challenge, that some developers or some creators are not in line probably with that mindset, and they just want to create. They just want to be black and white, but they haven't built up that muscle for cross collaboration and looking where they can break down silos. So that's a cultural kind of challenge, I think, within teams as well. And I rely a lot on the cadence of Scrum to help self-correct that. Retrospectives is one of my entries, as long as many others.
Yeah, one thing you do have to watch, I find, with, as you said, 1, 2, or 3 week sprints is people can't run on high with adrenaline forever, right? And there's this sense of urgency of what you deliver in that period of time. So it's something as a Scrum Master, I find you have to be very cognizant of, that you're not burning them out. You have to be realistic of what can be achieved, or you're trying to run them all at an adrenaline level 365 days of the year, and that too will break down. Yeah.
These are really good points. It's great to hear this discussion, but we are kind of coming close to the end, and we have a few more questions to address.
I'll just take care of these things. Will there be another presentation further delve into Agile?
I'll address that one. How about I address that one in a moment? You address the green question, and Brad Best has a question as well.
Are Scrum facilitators more effective when not a subject matter expert? In task or work? Yes, but I would almost challenge, you need to be with experience as you are, maybe a junior Scrum Master. You need to take the effort to empathize and know the world of a developer and a designer, or the challenges they go through, so you can empathize on their processes. I think it worked out so well for me because I was that jack of all trades and master of none. And I tried to do everything, try to be a hero of solving everything and doing everything. Literally, I learned the hard way that's not the best way for my mental health, or it doesn't help the team as well in co-collaboration. The stuff in red. Provide presentation platform ahead of session to allow early access. Learn. Yeah, good feedback for next time. Just asking for some, hopefully some patience, and for a takeaway next time, I'll provide that.
And Al, Brad Best had a question as well in the chat. Or Brad, do you want to ask the question, or would you like me to?
I don't mind. Al, my question was about I've had some teams of developers get very negative in Scrum meetings, and trying to sort of de-escalate. It was a challenge for me, right? I'm not a stand-up comic. I don't have that kind of just that charisma, that flow. And I was curious if you had any techniques for de-escalating and turning that energy in a positive direction.
Yeah. It's the appetite from these folks is that, do they want change? Do they want change? Like, what's your angle there where you can give them an aha moment? Because
so these are kind of defensive developers I'm talking about, who want to be left alone and just do their work. They're like, get out of my stuff. I don't want to talk to the team. I don't want people picking at me. And then other developers pick at them, and just managing that energy. I've worked with a few teams where it's really complicated, and I don't think I had a good handle on it. So I was curious if you had.
It's really hard. It's very challenging. I'm not going to say there's one way to do it. It's really dependent on the context and your personality, right? Your entry in is like, who's your supporter, right? One arguable way is like, can you get your leadership, your manager, to kind of like be a more, but then it comes off this weird way, like, oh, manager comes in, like, Al told the manager that they're not performing, as you get some bad vibes from that, right? So you want to use that with caution for that angle. But one way to do it is like, who is your co-supporter who has a bit of light, who will think of it as, if you're the coach, if you are Phil Jackson, who's your Michael Jordan, who will spread that vibe for meeting a common goal. And it's all about personal interaction, right? You give and take. You build some trust. You build some rapport. You give them the support that you need. You show them that you genuinely care, right? Almost to a personal extent, but maybe not so personal if it's not your cup of tea. But like, I get really personal. I'm fascinated by people's journey, and I want them to succeed. And I think that's the way I've been able to carve my space and found some success. But it's really hard. Like, there are moments where, like how Phil Jackson could not connect with Dennis Rodman because he was just a wild. If any of you have Netflix and go watch the Chicago Bulls documentary, I find those, like I said about basketball, I find those type of journeys very interesting. I find a lot of parallels of how you provide leadership with your core team. Because at the end of the day, when you're coaching the team, you're not there on the court to tell them pass here, pass there, pass on. You're not in them in the field. You have to rely you have to rely on their process to communicate with each other. So they're the ones signaling and doing the body language of passing work and collaborating with each other. So what are the experiences that allow you to do that? And I don't know, like and it takes time. I do the slow burn on getting a lot of trust, but like one thing that sticks out to me from this story in this book is like the way Jeff would say is like, he says to a group of developers, for how much longer do you want to work suboptimally? And it gets really in their ego, right? Because like, what are you trying to say? Like, well, it's not really about working harder, it's about working smarter. So do you want to work smarter, but talk to each other, or do you just want to bash your head against a wall constantly? Like in an extreme stance, right? With good intention, right? But that's one of the movies that revolve about my head and trying to understand like maybe the context there. But I probably wouldn't go so extreme because I wouldn't know them. But like those are that is the kind of curiosity that I would try to figure out how to instill a light. And retrospective is some way to do that.
If I could put my 5 cents here, I believe some social events and one-on-one meetings with team members, it really helps to build a good chemistry within team. And even people are irritated sometimes, they become more patient. And it's working in my team. I have 2 different teams, and one of them is very vocal team. You always know what they are thinking. If they don't like it, you will hear right away. Another team is very quiet, but there are some personalities like you are saying, Brad. What I noticed from my long career, when you build relations within team, when you have something outside of work, now it's much more difficult because we have this virtual communication. But still, I noticed then you have some fun time together, these people start to behave a little bit differently. So maybe you should think in this direction a little as well. And one-on-one, it helps as well. One-on-one, what I recently find out that one person is quiet on the meetings, and then I've heard the information, his feedback through product owner or through manager. I prefer team speaks on the meetings, and if they are not happy about something, everyone should know about that, and we will deal with that. So this one-on-one, it could be really helpful sometimes.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tatiana. Yeah, that building that culture of safety, and I think those two red post-its are related to each other. So maybe spending a bit more time on Miro. So I know we're at time, Ashley. I want to be able to give you the mic and close the session here the way you see fit.
Yeah, well, I will address that last question. Will there be another presentation further down the line? And the answer is yes. That's the plan. We haven't set a date yet, but hopefully Al will join us again in June sometime to give us more of the how of Agile and some more of those mechanics that Scrum mechanics that he sort of teased us with at the end there. In the meantime, we do have one more workshop on May 14th at 9:30 in the morning as well with UX designer Tom Sinoy. So if you're interested in learning more about UX design, especially at the enterprise level, then that will be a great workshop to attend as well. The registration page isn't up yet, but I should have it up relatively soon, and the format will be very, very similar. So you can watch out for some announcements on Facebook, or there's a press release coming out in the record again next week, or you can check in at nicart.ticket.ca, which is where we'll have our registration up by early next week. Thank you very much, Al, for this great workshop. I think we all found a lot of value and had a lot of fun with it. This has been a great experience. We'll definitely get that recording up as soon as we can, and once you pass me that Miro information, I'll pass that on to all the registered participants as well, so you can look for an email from me down the road. But in the meantime, thank you, Al, and a warm round of applause from.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This was very informative.
Yes, thank you.
Great, and thank you all for attending, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.